She's cheering at the sight of her own name. Ladies and gentlemen, this is what theaters look like across the world, and it just keeps getting worse. The memes.
And then they couldn't put dwarfs because this is just so typical of the left. The progressives always finding a way to find their way back to doing something not progressive. You'd think the most progressive thing would be get people jobs, and dwarfs want to work. And
decided to film herself in a theater totally empty, giggling, tee-hee-heeing with total glee.
And if you disagree with this sentiment, I don't need your business. Thanks.
But you don't seemingly like your own character, so she comes off as an insufferable, whiny brat.
Rachel Zegler just faced the ultimate Hollywood horror, sitting in a nearly empty theater, watching her own movie flop in real time. Not even Discount Tuesday could save it. The highly controversial Snow White remake didn't just bomb at the box office, it practically vanished into oblivion. And to make things even more humiliating, Zegler, 23, along with a few ride-or-die friends, were some of the only souls brave enough to witness the wreckage firsthand. For an actress who was once hailed as Hollywood's next big thing, this was nothing short of a brutal reality check. And now, with the box office numbers rolling in, the message is crystal clear. Nobody showed up. On March 25th, 2025, Rachel Zegler dragged a few loyal friends, Ilda Mason, Jorge Mason, Remy, and Maria Isabel Demison, to watch her own movie in what looked like a ghost town of a theater. Thanks to Ilda's Instagram stories, the internet got a front row seat to the cringe. With barely anyone else in sight, Ilda screamed, "Rachel Zegler!" as her name flashed on the big screen. The result? Awkward laughter and a forced cheer from Rachel herself. Now, here's where it gets really embarrassing. It's unclear whether they rented out the theater for privacy or if the empty seats just came with the movie. Either way, the whole situation looked tragic. The group tried to make the most of the night, even participating in a viral trend where they approached a Regal employee and asked, "2 tickets, please." The confused employee innocently responded, "For which movie?" At which point, the camera panned to them holding their Snow White-themed popcorn bucket and souvenir cup, looking completely baffled. But as if the night couldn't get more painfully ironic, Zegler clutched a bouquet of flowers, likely a sympathy gift from her friends, because the box office wasn't handing out any trophies. The numbers don't lie. A catastrophic box office bomb. With just 3.5 million in Thursday previews and a dismal 43 million opening weekend, Snow White wasn't just a flop, it was an expensive one. By comparison, The Little Mermaid remake, despite its own controversy, debuted with a respectable $95 million, more than double what Snow White could muster. Even Dumbo, yes, Dumbo, made nearly the same amount on its opening weekend, but at a fraction of the cost. And here's the real kicker. Disney spent over $250 million on Snow White, and that's before factoring in marketing costs. Meanwhile, social media was having a field day. Seating charts flooded X, formerly Twitter, showing barely any tickets sold. Photos of completely empty theaters circulated widely. The internet, of course, never misses a chance to turn failure into comedy, with some even calling for a GoFundMe to help Disney break even. But let's be real, this wasn't just a box office disaster, it was a public relations nightmare. As the Snow White remake tanked, an old clip of Rachel Zegler resurfaced, and let's just say, it aged like milk. Zegler had once boldly declared that people would wait in line to see her movies, likening herself to the winged victory of Samothrace. a famous ancient Greek statue housed at the Louvre. The winged Victory came to the Louvre in pieces, and people still line up to see her. And I can only hope that despite my flaws and my breaks, at every premiere and everything I do, people will wait in line to see. Fast forward to reality, and the only things stacking up were the receipts, all pointing to disaster. Theaters across the country were deserted. Ticket sales were tragic. Critics wasted zero time calling her out. One user put it bluntly, "Welcome back to reality, princess. Snow White was a complete flop." Ian Miles Chong even reposted the clip on X, reminding everyone that Snow White had officially become Disney's lowest-performing live-action remake in decades. While audiences were only just realizing the disaster unfolding on screen, Disney executives had already seen the writing on the wall, and they were panicking long before the film's release. Internally, there had been growing concerns about Rachel Zegler's public comments, which seemed to alienate the very audience Disney needed to make Snow White a success. The trouble started as far back as Disney's D23 Expo, where Zegler took the stage, and instead of hyping up the film as a love letter to the original, she took a completely different approach, trashing the 1937 classic. Instead of celebrating the timeless fairy tale, she ridiculed it, calling the original prince a weirdo and saying the romance was outdated. She even went as far as to suggest that Snow White shouldn't be saved by a prince anymore, but rather become a strong, independent leader.
What do you mean by that?
I just mean that it's no longer 1937, and we absolutely wrote a Snow White that is
not going to be saved by the prince.
She's not going to be saved by the prince, and she's not going to be dreaming about true love. She's dreaming about becoming the leader she knows she can be. I mean, you know, the original cartoon came out in 1937, and very evidently so.
While Disney had been carefully shifting narratives in recent years to focus on more modernized princess stories, Zegler's dismissive attitude toward the beloved classic raised major red flags. The studio was deeply aware that fans still held a strong connection to the original Snow White, and her comments only fueled widespread backlash online. But the real behind-the-scenes disaster came when Zegler injected politics into the conversation. After wrapping filming, she veered away from promoting the movie and instead used her growing platform to voice strong political opinions, including a pro-Palestine stance that would later create massive problems for the studio. Disney, a corporation that relies on international markets, found itself in a difficult position. They knew that Zegler's political statements, while her personal right, could pose a serious risk to the film's global release, particularly in regions that have historically reacted strongly to politically charged Hollywood figures. It got so bad that Disney flew out a PR team to personally meet with Zegler, trying to calm the storm before it spiraled even further. But the damage was already done. Social media had turned against her. Major news outlets picked up on the controversy, and even some Disney insiders began questioning the casting decision altogether. One executive, speaking anonymously to industry insiders, revealed that the studio had been aware of Zegler's outspoken personality, but they had underestimated how much it would impact the movie's reception. Instead of marketing a beloved remake, they were now scrambling to put out fires caused by their own lead actress. And the worst was yet to come, because Snow White wasn't just suffering from Zegler's PR disasters. There was also an awkward, behind-the-scenes feud brewing between her and one of Hollywood's biggest stars, Gal Gadot. While Disney tried to downplay internal tensions, there was no hiding the fact that Rachel Zegler and Gal Gadot were not exactly best friends behind the scenes. At first glance, the two seemed like an odd pairing. Zegler, the young rising star with an outspoken personality, and Gadot, the established Hollywood icon known for her polished, diplomatic demeanor. But their differences ran deeper than just personality. It all came down to politics, professionalism, and power dynamics. While promoting Snow White, fans noticed that Gadot seemed unusually distant in interviews with Zegler. During a press event, a reporter asked both actresses how they approached their roles. Gadot gave a thoughtful, well-rehearsed answer about embracing the classic villainy of the evil queen, while Zegler launched into another speech about how Snow White wasn't about love or traditional princess tropes anymore. The tension grew even more noticeable during their Oscars appearance together. The two were paired up as presenters, but after the event, Zegler left a shady comment on Instagram, referring to Gadot as a professional pageant queen. While the comment could have been meant playfully, many saw it as backhanded, a subtle dig at Gadot's polished and carefully managed Hollywood persona. But the real turning point in their strained relationship came when Rachel began publicly supporting pro-Palestine causes, a move that placed her in direct opposition to Gadot, an Israeli actress who had previously served in the Israel Defense Forces, IDF. According to industry insiders, Zegler's social media activity created security concerns for Gadot, who was already a highly recognizable figure in Hollywood. Disney reportedly had to increase security measures for Gadot during promotional events, as the political divide between the two actresses sparked heated discussions online. Sources even claimed that Gadot expressed frustration about how the controversy was affecting the film's rollout, feeling that the focus should have been on celebrating the film rather than becoming embroiled in online drama. And while Gadot kept things professional in public, she reportedly distanced herself from Zegler behind the scenes. For Disney, this was the ultimate nightmare scenario. Instead of having two powerhouse actresses working together to promote a blockbuster, they had an increasingly awkward and uncomfortable PR situation, one that was only making the audience less interested in seeing the film. By the time Snow White finally limped into theaters, the damage had been done. The film was overshadowed by controversy, the two lead actresses were barely interacting, and audiences, many of whom had been lifelong Disney fans, were left wondering, how did one of the most beloved fairy tales of all time turn into such a disaster? And with box office numbers now proving just how badly Snow White bombed, it seems like this wasn't the fairy tale ending Disney had hoped for. Following the presidential election, Zegler posted, "May Trump's supporters never know peace." At that point, Disney had enough. She was alienating half the potential audience for an already doomed film. Producer Mark Platt, who had already flown out to meet her twice, tried a last-ditch effort to control the damage. Eventually, Rachel agreed to have all her posts approved by a Disney-paid social media expert. By the time Snow White limped into theaters, the damage was irreparable. Even Disney downplayed its premiere, holding a low-key event instead of a glitzy Hollywood spectacle. How did Disney get it so wrong? From Zegler's controversial comments to CGI dwarfs that creeped everyone out, Snow White wasn't just a movie flop. It was a cautionary tale for Hollywood. And as the dust settles, one thing is clear. This wasn't the happily ever after Disney had hoped for. What do you guys think? Was Snow White doomed from the start? Let us know in the comments. And if you want more insane Hollywood drama, subscribe and check out our next video. You won't want to miss this.